Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Curt Anderson and Maria Rios. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the alleged crime, then offer my analysis. Curt Douglas Anderson was born on December 23, 1962, and lived in Whitestown, Indiana. He had worked as a psychiatric nurse in the Navy for over 20 years. At some point, he married a woman named Yoshi. In 2021, the couple moved into a 2,600 square foot house located at 4283 Mays Lane. The other key player in this case is Maria Florinda Rios Perez de Velasquez. She was born sometime around 1993 in Guatemala. Maria and her husband, Mauricio Velasquez, moved to the United States in 2022. They had 3 daughters and 1 son. The couple worked as cleaners for a company called A&A Quality Cleaning LLC, which performed work for the builder Ryan Homes. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crime. On November 5, 2025, at 6:50 a.m., the police received a 911 call reporting a burglary in progress at the home of Curt Anderson on Mays Lane. When the police arrived, they saw that Maria Rios was on the front porch along with a large pool of blood. Her husband, Mauricio, was kneeling down and holding her. There was a bullet hole in the front door of the house. Maria had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the right side of her head. The police told Curt Anderson and his wife, Yoshi, to exit the house, but initially they did not comply. Eventually, they exited the house out of the back door and were detained. Investigators interviewed Maria's husband, Mauricio, Curt, and Curt's wife, Yoshi. I'll start with Mauricio's interview. Mauricio explained to the police that he and his wife were supposed to clean a model home, which had just been completed about a week earlier. The house was in the Windswept Farms subdivision, right next to the subdivision containing Curt Anderson's house. Mauricio received a text message from his boss containing a link for the address to the model home. The link led them directly to Curt Anderson's house. Again, this is what Mauricio claims. This was clearly not the right house, but Mauricio believed that it was. The police ran the address supplied to Mauricio through mapping software, and it led to the model home, which was directly east of Curt Anderson's house. It's not really clear why Mauricio went to the wrong address. The authorities never mentioned anything about a language barrier, but that is one possible explanation. Curt Anderson's house was clearly marked with a different house number than the model home, but Mauricio said he didn't notice that. Mauricio and Maria expected the model home to be unoccupied. They walked up to the front porch of Curt Anderson's house. They did not hear any noises from the inside, like no voices or movement. There were no vehicles in the driveway or on the street in front of the house. Mauricio could see furniture inside the residence, but some of the houses that he and his wife cleaned were furnished, so that was not necessarily an indicator that they were at the wrong house. Neither one of them knocked or banged on the door. As they stood on the front porch, Maria had the keys in her hands and kept trying different keys to open the front door. She did this for about 30 seconds to a minute before the gunshot rang out. Now moving to what Curt Anderson told the police. At around 2 or 3 a.m., Curt and his wife Yoshi went to bed. Curt woke up because he heard something. At first, he wasn't sure if he actually heard something because he had only been asleep for a few hours. After he stood up, he heard a commotion at the front door of his house. Initially, this noise was subtle, but then it intensified. Curt could hear what sounded like keys, tools, or an instrument being used at the front door. This commotion scared him because he realized this was not his imagination. There was actually someone trying to gain entry through the front door. Curt made his way to the landing at the top of the stairs and looked down toward the front door. He could see 2 people on his front porch. Curt thought to himself, "Oh no, this is happening and they're going to get in. What am I going to do? It's not going away and I have to do something now." Curt made his way to a music room, which he referred to as his safe room, and retrieved a Glock 48 from a locked case. This is a semi-automatic pistol chambered in 9mm Luger. The typical magazine size for this weapon is 10 cartridges. Curt said that he used to have a Sig Sauer, but he traded it for the Glock in September 2025. These are the only two guns he ever owned, and he never fired either one. In order to prepare for a home invasion, he watched videos. The commotion at the front door became increasingly aggressive, which terrified Curt. He was worried that the two people would gain entry and get to his wife. Curt inserted a magazine into the pistol and cycled the action, but his hand slipped, so he had to cycle the action again to chamber a round. He returned to the top of the stairs and told his wife to get into the music room. Looking out at the front porch, he could see the two individuals thrusting and getting increasingly aggressive. 10 to 15 seconds after loading his weapon, Curt fired a single shot through the front door, fatally striking Maria in the head. He admitted that he did not say anything before discharging his weapon. After killing Maria, Curt heard a man crying out and weeping. He thought that maybe he scared them or something. Curt told Yoshi to call 911 as he stayed at the top of the staircase. She handed him the phone, and he told the operator, "Please come, please come, please come. They are trying to get in." Curt was holding the phone in his left hand and the pistol in his right hand. He told the operator he did not know what to do with the gun. One can make a good argument that Curt's statement is true in every sense. The operator told Curt to put it down, so he returned it to the case. When the police arrived at his house, Curt told the operator that he was still scared of the people on the porch, and he wanted them off the porch in order to feel safe and come out. This is why he did not initially comply with the orders of the police to exit the house. As I mentioned, the police also spoke to Curt's wife, Yoshi. Her account was brief compared to Curt's. She stated that she and her husband went to bed at 2 a.m. They woke up to the sound of someone trying to open the front door, like a constant turning of a locked doorknob. Curt woke up and said, "What's going on?" "Oh, blank, break-in." He started to panic. Yoshi could hear someone interacting with the doorknob keyhole, like they were trying to insert keys. Based on these 3 interviews and other evidence, the state came to believe that Curt did not acquire proper information to make a reasonable decision on the use of deadly force, and was therefore criminally liable. On November 17, 2025, Curt Anderson was arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter. He is facing between 10 and 30 years in prison if convicted. Now moving to my analysis. Curt Anderson maintains his innocence, and he has a few supporters. His attorney provided a statement outlining the argument for Curt's innocence. He indicated that Curt was fully justified by the Castle Doctrine provision of Indiana's self-defense law. This law allows a person to use reasonable force if he reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent an unlawful entry into his home. Curt had every reason to believe his actions were absolutely necessary and fully justified at the time. Curt's attorney also said that Curt was being unfairly judged based on facts that were unknowable to him as events unfolded in the early morning. The law does not allow a criminal conviction based on hindsight. The state of Indiana, of course, disagrees. As I mentioned, they believe that Curt unlawfully killed Maria. This brings me to the question, is Curt Anderson guilty of voluntary manslaughter? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he is guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. There is no question that Curt fatally shot Maria in the head by firing a single round through his front door. Maria was trying to make entry into Curt's house at the time of the shooting, but she was not using any force. She was simply trying to open the door using the incorrect keys. Both the handle and the deadbolt of the front door were in the locked position. One could argue that Curt was not in any danger when he fired because the locked front door still afforded him adequate protection. Curt never announced himself. If he had, Maria would have undoubtedly discontinued her effort to make entry. She expected the model home to be unoccupied, so she would have realized that something was wrong. Allegedly, Curt told a neighbor that he would shoot anyone who tried to get in his house, which the state could argue makes him seem like he was eager for a fight, like he wanted to use his gun to kill someone. Now moving to the exculpatory factors. Maria and Mauricio arrived at the wrong house even though they were given the correct address. Curt Anderson's house had a different number than the house they were looking for, but the couple did not recognize this. The couple did not knock on the front door. Presumably, they did not ring the doorbell either. So they made no effort to announce themselves. Rather, they just tried to make entry through the front door. Maria tried multiple keys in an effort to enter the house. Both Curt and Yoshi could hear this activity. Again, Curt referred to this as a commotion. Curt said the commotion became increasingly aggressive. He knew that no one was supposed to be at his house. It was not like he was expecting someone to enter using a set of keys. This was highly unusual. One could argue that Curt's belief that Maria and her husband were intruders was reasonable under the circumstances. Even though Curt allegedly made a statement to a neighbor indicating he would shoot an intruder, he really wasn't well prepared for a home invasion. It didn't seem like he was looking forward to a violent confrontation using his firearm. He had one firearm in his house that he stored in a different room from where he slept. This pistol, which was unloaded, was locked in a case. After retrieving the pistol and loading it, Curt only fired one round. It's not like he emptied his weapon into the front door. Curt had only slept for a few hours at the time of the incident, which may have affected his ability to think clearly. This was not his fault, as he was not able to choose the time of this incident. Maria and her husband are the ones who caused this encounter, even though it was just a mistake. Curt never invited them to his house or did anything to facilitate their arrival. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Curt Anderson is guilty of voluntary manslaughter? In my opinion, yes, he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I can appreciate how Maria trying out different keys and rattling the door handle would be frightening for Curt, but she did not break the plane of the door frame. Even though it was reasonable for Curt to believe that Maria and her husband could have been burglars, they never actually made entry. Curt certainly had a reason to be frightened and to arm himself, but he did not have a reason to discharge his firearm through the door. His defense really comes down to this idea that the behaviors of trying out different keys and rattling a door handle are equivalent in provocation level to someone entering a house. Curt overreacted to suspicious activity by firing his weapon. There were many possible non-lethal actions he could have taken first to defuse the situation, which would not have placed him in danger, like calling 911 and announcing himself. Curt moved outside the limit of what can be justified under the Castle Doctrine and demonstrated a reckless disregard for human life. Even though I believe Curt is guilty, I don't see this as a case that deserves the maximum penalty for voluntary manslaughter. It is clear that Curt was provoked, even if that provocation was minor. He did not ask for any of this. The best resolution in this case is probably a plea bargain, maybe something where Curt pleads guilty to the lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter and receives a sentence of around 3 to 5 years in prison. When considering his culpability, it may help to contemplate a thought experiment, one that could bring clarity when reflecting on the case. Imagine a scenario from an alternate reality where Maria and Mauricio never showed up at Curt's house. Instead, 2 other people were there. This married couple, who I will call Jane and John Doe, engaged in the same behaviors as Maria and Mauricio, like trying to find the right key to open the front door and not announcing themselves. Curt, acting exactly as he did in real life, fired through the door and killed Jane. When the police arrived, they find Jane dead. John cannot produce an innocent explanation for why he and his wife were trying to get in. As the police investigate, they discovered that Jane and John Doe were there to murder Curt Anderson. All doubt was removed about this. For example, in one of Jane's pockets, she had a written confession in her own handwriting detailing the murder plot. In another pocket, she had a flash drive containing a video confession featuring her and John talking about how they were going to make entry and shoot Curt multiple times. Maybe they even detailed how they acquired the keys to the house. On top of all this, the police connect Jane and John Doe to 5 other murders in the area. Under this scenario, one could argue that Curt saved his life and the life of his wife Yoshi by firing through the door because the couple was definitely planning to kill him. Would he have been charged with voluntary manslaughter in this alternate reality? I do not believe that he would have been. However, his behavior in this scenario was identical to his real-life behavior. He still exercised poor judgment and demonstrated a reckless disregard for human life. The only difference is that in the alternate reality, the people on the front porch were actually killers. Too often, situations like this are evaluated in hindsight. Curt's attorney is right, at least about that part. People tend to be judged for what actually happened, such as dangerous individuals being killed, rather than for whether their actions were reasonable based on what they knew in the moment. Maria's death was a tragedy, but that doesn't change the fact that Curt did not have access to all the information. He assumed the worst and responded in a way that exceeded what was objectively reasonable. Curt let his panic run the show. Now moving to my final thoughts. There are two lessons that can be learned from this case. The first lesson is that before discharging a weapon, a homeowner better be reasonably certain they are actually in danger. There are not only legal considerations, but moral ones as well. Even if Curt was never charged with a crime, he must live with the fact that he killed an innocent person. Maria simply showed up at the wrong house. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. The second lesson is that a person should be careful when making entry into a house, regardless of the purpose for the visit. Maria and Mauricio should have verified they were at the correct address and announced themselves. They should never have relied on the good judgment of anyone who may have been inside the house, because one never knows how a homeowner will react to suspicious behavior. Those are my thoughts in the case of Curt Anderson and Maria Rios. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.